I just realized something about health and nutrition and eating that nobody ever pays attention to, and that's your source of high quality fat. Now, this sounds negative since our world has such a stigma around fat, yet in our cells, the membrane is pure fat. Our membranes of every cell is made out of fat. So it's like looking at a piece of iron. Unless you put paint over it, it's gonna rust like a motherfucker and it will fall apart within years. If it has a high quality layer, protective layer of paint, it's gonna shine and look good and basically be around forever. However, that paint coat has to get renewed every few years. With our cells, it's obviously has to be done way more often, and we have to have a constant high quality source of fat for our body. There's just no way of going around fat. Now, where you get the fat from is really, really important, and this information could literally help you reverse aging. This is how important it is, because just like iron gets oxidized and turned into iron oxide, also known as rust, our cells, if they don't have a good membrane, also get oxidized, and that's how aging is sped up. Now, this is where all your fast food, store-bought foods are really, really unhealthy. Not because of other ingredients. I'm not talking here about the sugars, not talking here about the horrible produce which is treated with toxins and chemicals like 10, 20, 30 times till it reaches you. I'm not talking here about poorly treated animals which give you meat which has high levels of adrenaline and fear hormones from the way they're treated. I'm talking here about something really foundational, which hardly anybody pays attention to. And people even consider the opposite to be true. We are always told how saturated fats are so evil. Avoid saturated fats, avoid fats, low fat. If fat makes you fat. No. Just because it's the same word doesn't mean it makes you fat. Scientifically speaking, biologically speaking, fats did not exist in the way we ingest them right now in this 21st century 100 years ago. I mean, I'm talking about the modern sources of fats. I'm talking about the modern oils. We have refined palm oil. In Europe, it's really popular, the sunflower seed refined oil. And pretty much any oil that's not cold pressed extra virgin, any oil that's not like butter looking. So the highest quality of oil you can use for frying, for anything, is your naturally solid at room temperature oils, fats. So there's only 3 or 4 that fall into this really first class category of the things our body's accustomed to, that our ancient DNA is used to, and not the last 50 or 100 years where all these diseases started happening. The cardiovascular health has gone below zero, in the deep negatives. We're talking here about your lard, yes, the fat from animals, your butter, the fat from milk, and maybe your the only plant-based version I'm aware of, and that's solid at room temperature, is your coconut butter, coconut oil, and possibly your cacao butter. Those are the only butters that I'm aware of which are solid at room temperature, which means being solid room temperature means they're naturally saturated, which is really, really healthy. No matter what you heard the Health Heart Association say, which are all funded by major oil companies and refineries. I mean, who gives, I think, Crisco, the American margarine, which is chemically saturated and turned solid at room temperature, butter alternative, they funded like millions into the American Health and Heart Association, from my understanding. And more information on this specific topic about the American Health Heart Association, you can read, you can watch that in a video which inspired this video and which literally blew me away with information. I'm definitely going to link that doctor's video in the description. I highly recommend you watch it if you're still here and you want the scientific doctor medical backing behind this information. So pretty much most information that's in the public around saturated fats is extremely wrong. If you use your refined palm oils, your vegetable oils, which don't even come from vegetables, they come from basically hybrid, mass-produced seeds, chemically extracted fat from those seeds, and they call it vegetable oil because it sounds healthy, because it has vegetable in the name. Like, there's no vegetables in that whole ecosystem of production. There are some seeds, but they're not vegetables. So I'm talking here about all your horrible palm oils, vegetable oils. Let me just remember what I heard in the last video. Essentially anything that's not cold pressed. If it's cold pressed, it means you can naturally squeeze out the oil. You can literally take olives and squeeze the oil from your hand using the pressure of your hand. You take your coconuts, you take your butter. Butter was produced by hand. You put it in a barrel and you spin it till the edges literally collect the fat. So that's how butter was produced, by hand. Your fats from animals, lard and so on, is obviously taken from all the fats from that animal. The issue is, where can you find lard that's from a humanely treated animal that didn't die in horrible fear, which releases lots of negative chemicals and hormones which you don't want to ingest from that meat or fat, right? Called lard. Where can you find butter from grass-fed cows, which also are not coked up on antibiotics and are not laboratory bred? Because unfortunately, like I said in the previous video, and you guys can watch this video, I'll link it below, most cows are not allowed to naturally reproduce. The governments are forcing laboratory bred cows. And then to top it off, these cows are doped up on antibiotics non-stop. Vaccines doping it up these cows with antibiotics. So what you're drinking is a cocktail of an antibiotics, which they call milk. So these cows can have 3 times the production of milk, which is highly unnatural if you ask me. So most butter, unfortunately, does not come from a good source. Yet this poorly made butter is still of better quality than your lower class oils, which are chemically, industrially saturated. So margarine, if you have that in your fridge and you're still here, throw that away. If you don't want to throw it away, watch that video by this doctor which inspired me and then throw it away. So there's a whole list of all these oils which will be covered in that video. I highly recommend you watch it. But the key takeaway here is your grade A source of quality paint, which you can put on your cells to protect them from oxidation, to protect them from aging, and to reverse the aging process which has been sped up by the oxidation of our body, which is it's a natural process unless you protect your cells from it. What ends up happening is you should invest in quality protection. We're talking here about your avocado liquid oil, your olive liquid oil, and then your next class up, very similar but solid, you have your lard, butter, and coconut oil, however you want to call it. Possibly coconut butter, but those are really expensive options. I highly recommend using your coconut oil for everything, cooking, everything. Now, some things, a low smoke point of olive oil makes it kind of iffy for frying, and you should definitely read more about smoke points. The point at which temperature it starts smoking. However, people say, like, don't heat up olive oil because it'll lose its nutrients. Well, you shouldn't really heat up any oil. Unless you really have to fry something like an egg, pancakes, or fry some nice potatoes, right? But in reality, like, nobody taught us about, don't fry your palm oil, don't fry your vegetable oils, because they're already nutrient dead. Like, you can't really make it worse. It's already bad enough on its own. It's like, oh, you can fry on an olive you want, it's already dead. It's like, stop beating a dead horse and get a quality live horse with live nutrients. Your body needs fuel, and most taste in meats and your foods comes from fat. Nobody addresses this fact, but if your fast food had no fat in it, it would taste horrible. But imagine if you take what fast foods use, produce and some meat and a bun, make it from a high quality ingredients, get your organic flour for that bread bun, get organic produce for those veggies, and get a really nicely treated animal for that meat and fat, and then fry it or however you make it in your kitchen with like on butter or on lard or something, and then taste that. You will be blown away. For the first time in my life, my girlfriend and I ate bread made from organic flour, and oh my god, like it was not hard to make that bread. You can't really fuck it up. It's really simple to make bread. People have been making bread for thousands of years, but the ingredients are important. And oh my god, I didn't even like follow some difficult recipes. I just kind of by hand put it approximate amounts of ingredients. It wasn't like even like correct to the gram or to the ounce. It was like really like whatever. I'll just put it approximate. So it's a little bit of salt, a little bit of lard, bunch of flour, and a little bit of yeast, a little bit of water. I think the word I'm looking for is knet it, or like whatever that thing is called when you like press it. You have to like mix it by hand. And oh my god, like I have zero experience making bread. That was my like 5th bread I ever made in my life. First bread I made from organic flour, and obviously flour is the biggest ingredient in bread. And oh my god, I can eat that bread and drink water and not need anything else. That's how like nutrient rich it is. I mean, you see all these monks living off of bread and water, and now I realize how and why. Because when you clean yourself out from toxins, and when you ingest nutrient rich ingredients, you don't need to have like 20 different foods to fill you up, and pounds and kilos of quantity of this just keep feeding yourself nutrient dead food, and then extract the little bits of whatever nutrients left in there. You won't just have to eat in shit huge quantities. We're talking here about small meals which just fill you up. Give your digestive system a vacation from the amounts you're used to eat, and put your body in an enlightened state. Like I was so tasty. I was eating bread and salt. I didn't eat anything else for like one meal. I was like, oh my god, I don't need anything else. I was having a food orgasm from Himalayan pink salt and that organic bread. Wow. So that small amount of money, the extra few bucks you'll spend on that meal using high quality fat, will literally reverse your aging. You won't need any cosmetics. You won't need any legal drugs, or some people call them pharmaceuticals. You won't need to go to those doctors. And you will be the healthiest, happiest person ever, because a happy body gives you a happy mind. Thank you guys for watching.